Welcome to the Bench Report, where we unpack those fascinating discussions happening in the UK Parliament that don't always make it to the front page, but, they often have a real impact on our lives, whether it's our work or just, day-to-day stuff. Politics, it's everyone's business, right?
Absolutely.
Today, we're diving into a recent House of Lords debate, and this one really caught my eye because it's something I think we've all probably wondered about at some point.
Mm.
You shared the transcript with me, and it all boils down to a pretty simple question. Should there be dedicated lanes for British passport holders at UK airports?
The age-old passport queue dilemma.
Yeah.
I can already sense some strong opinions brewing out there.
Well, we're going to unpack all the key arguments from both sides and hopefully give you a clear picture of what's at stake here. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, so Baroness Hoey kicks things off by asking the government what their plans are for ensuring these dedicated lines for British passport holders, and right away you can sense a kind of, principled stance underlying her question.
She seems to be tapping into this idea of national identity, that citizens returning to their own country should be afforded a certain, priority or at least a clear pathway back home.
Exactly, and Lord Hanson of Flint, the Home Office Minister, responds by saying that previous reviews, particularly after Brexit, actually concluded that having separate UK-only queues would actually slow things down for everyone at the border.
It's all about efficiency, right? Keeping those lines moving smoothly,
Yeah.
minimizing bottlenecks.
Right. And he even suggests that this analysis, the data behind this decision could potentially be made public, which I think is interesting.
Transparency is always a good thing, especially when it comes to decisions that impact so many people.
So their main focus seems to be on what they call border fluidity, meaning that they want the whole process of moving people through the airport to be as smooth and as quick as possible.
Right. It's kind of like traffic flow, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes adding a dedicated lane can actually cause more congestion overall if it's not carefully planned.
Now, Baroness Hoey counters this by saying that it's not simply about how long you have to wait in line, it's a matter of principle. She argues that it just feels right for citizens returning to their own country to have a dedicated entry point, something you see in some other countries as well.
It's about that sense of belonging, a clear acknowledgement that you're coming back home.
And she even asks the minister to reconsider this, really pushing for a change in policy here.
It'll be interesting to see how the government responds to that kind of direct appeal to national sentiment.
Now, Lord Hanson doubles down on the efficiency argument, suggesting that separate UK lines would actually lead to longer wait times overall for British citizens.
How's that?
Well, he points out that British and Irish citizens, along with citizens from Commonwealth countries and those from countries with reciprocal agreements, can already use those automated border gates, which are designed to speed things up significantly.
Those e-gates are a lifesaver when they're working properly, at least.
Right. And his argument is that diverting British citizens away from those efficient automated gates and into potentially slower manual queues would actually be counterproductive for many.
I see. So by streamlining the process for as many people as possible using technology, they're hoping to improve the experience for everyone.
Exactly. But then Baroness Hamway jumps in and she brings up another really important point, the impact on other travelers.
Right. If we're prioritizing UK citizens, what about everyone else arriving in the country?
She points out that having dedicated UK lines would inevitably mean longer queues for those without British passports, and she questions whether that aligns with the UK needing to be welcoming to business travelers and tourists.
It's a valid concern. The UK's economy relies heavily on tourism and international business, so making it harder for those visitors to enter the country could have some serious repercussions.
Exactly. And she emphasizes that the real solution lies in better overall capacity and organization at the border, not just shifting people around into different lines.
It's about improving the infrastructure and making the whole process more efficient for everyone, regardless of nationality.
Now, of course, no discussion about borders these days would be complete without mentioning Brexit, right?
Oh, it's the elephant in the room, isn't it?
And Lord Hanson brings it up, suggesting that those potentially longer queues for British citizens might actually be a symptom of the impact of Brexit as a whole.
Interesting. So he's essentially linking this issue back to the broader changes brought about by leaving the EU.
Right. And while he acknowledges Baroness Hoey's principled stance on Brexit, he makes it clear that they have different views on that matter.
That's important to note because it underscores how Brexit continues to be a divisive issue even within Parliament.
He also mentions the government's efforts to manage the consequences of Brexit in areas like security and growth, which are all tied into this border control discussion.
It's all interconnected.
Mhm.
Every decision has ripple effects across different areas of policy.
Now, Lord Davies of Gower steps in, and he poses a question about reciprocity. He asks if the government will try to negotiate agreements with EU airports so that UK citizens get some kind of fast-track access, similar to what EU travelers often have when entering the UK.
It's about fairness, isn't it? If EU citizens get preferential treatment at UK borders, shouldn't British citizens receive similar treatment when traveling to the EU?
Exactly. And Lord Hanson confirms that they are exploring those kinds of individual agreements with European partners.
It's not a simple fix, though, is it? Negotiating these kind of bilateral agreements takes time and effort, and there's no guarantee of success.
Absolutely. Now, Lord Davies then shifts the focus to resources, specifically investing in staffing and technology at the UK border force to reduce waiting times.
So instead of creating separate lines, the focus seems to be on improving the existing system.
Lord Hanson confirms that significant amounts of resource are being invested in border security, including those automated gates, and he says some of that funding is coming from savings from what he calls the wasteful Rwanda scheme.
That's a pretty loaded term, wasteful. It suggests that they see that particular policy as a poor use of resources.
And he promises to provide specific figures on this investment later on.
Transparency is key here. People want to know how their tax money is being spent and whether it's actually making a difference.
Now, Lord Bill Moria raises a very intriguing point. He notes that the UK is unusual in not having routine exit checks at its borders.
Meaning they don't systematically track who's leaving the country.
Right, and he suggests that implementing those exit checks could actually improve security and immigration control, particularly regarding people who overstay their visas.
That makes sense. Knowing who's left the country would provide valuable data for managing immigration and identifying potential security threats.
And Lord Hanson agrees, calling it a sensible suggestion, and emphasizing the government's focus on tackling overstaying.
It sounds like this might be an area for future policy development.
Now, Lord Dubs brings up the EU's new entry-exit system, or ETA, asking about how these new travel rules will impact UK citizens.
Another Brexit-related hurdle to navigate.
Lord Hanson confirms that the EU will be introducing this ETA for non-EU members, which, because of Brexit, now includes UK citizens.
So even for short trips to the EU, UK citizens will need to apply for authorization beforehand.
While there's no set start date yet, the government is examining the potential impact of this new system.
It's yet another layer of bureaucracy and a reminder of how Brexit continues to reshape the UK's relationship with Europe.
Lord Moylan then highlights a potential inconsistency in the common travel area with Ireland. He points out that while there are no passport checks for Irish citizens arriving in the UK, there are checks for UK citizens departing to Ireland.
That does seem a bit odd, doesn't it?
Lord Hanson responds by saying that his understanding is that routine border controls between the UK and Ireland are currently absent due to the Good Friday Agreement, but he asks for specific examples to investigate further.
It's a complex situation with historical and political sensitivities intertwined with practical border management considerations.
Baroness Winterton then brings in a local perspective, stressing the importance of reopening Doncaster-Sheffield Airport for the benefit of growth and tourism in the region.
It's a reminder that these border policies have real-world impacts on local communities and economies.
She urges the minister to discuss this with the transport ministers.
Collaboration across different departments is crucial for addressing these multifaceted issues.
And Lord Hanson assures her that he will do so, emphasizing that any airport development would have to include robust border controls.
Security remains a top priority, even as they try to facilitate economic growth and development.
Finally, Viscount Thurso voices concerns from the tourism sector about the high cost and complexity of obtaining UK tourist visas.
This is a crucial issue. If it's too difficult or expensive to visit the UK, it could discourage tourism and harm the economy.
Lord Hanson acknowledges that 45% of airport arrivals are non-UK citizens, representing a huge amount of business and tourism, and he emphasizes the government's goal of being both secure and welcoming.
It's that delicate balancing act again, isn't it? Trying to protect the country while also keeping it open to the world.
So this discussion in the House of Lords really highlights the complexities of border management in a post-Brexit world. It's about balancing national identity and efficiency with the need to be a welcoming destination for travelers and businesses.
And it's clear that there's no easy answer. The points raised, from dedicated lines to reciprocal agreements and investment in technology, all have a direct impact on your experience as a traveler and on the UK's standing on the global stage.
So we encourage you to keep thinking about these issues and how they might affect you. Because remember, politics is everyone's business. Make sure to subscribe to the Bench Report so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world of UK politics. And until then, take care.